What is up? It is Madeline. I am the host and co-founder of winefolly.com, where we learn by drinking. Today is an awesome show today. I have some news to get us started off, and then we're talking about less traveled paths and, my goodness, bitterness. Who cares about bitterness, right? Nobody cares about bitterness. All right, first up though, let's talk news. This is just to get me started, honestly, so that I don't screw up during the tasting, which has been my last couple weeks' biggest reflection on myself. So I finally got a chance to read through the news today, and bitterness sort of encompasses this entire week on a profound level. But there was some good news. One is Alibaba is investing $15 million into quantum and AI. You have no idea how excited that I am about technology and everything about it. And plus, there's going to be one of his research centers is in Bellevue, Washington, which is actually kind of where we are. All right. The next thing that I thought was really cool was that SpaceX has 3 times the charm. The Falcon 9 booster, it's gone up into space and it's come back. Long time ago, for one of our April's Fools articles, we talked about wine going into outer space. Well, it might actually be possible. This booster has gone up and landed. That could save up to $20 million per space run. Now, I don't have $20 million in my pocket, but in theory, this whole spaceflight thing for normal people could actually happen. And I'm definitely going to be bringing wine up there, just so you know. All right. This is ridiculous, but Taylor Swift has launched an app. It is a social app to socialize with her followers. All I can say to relate to this is I'm really kind of with Billy on the Street and his love of pink. Go Pink. Did you know Pink makes wine? Hot fact. I don't know anything about it, but Carla Mondavi told me that she makes wine. That's my story. All right.
When are you going to make a wine folly app, Madeline?
When are we going to make a wine folly app? I have been delaying on the wine folly app for a little while now because I want to make something a lot cooler, which we're working on this next year. Hopefully you'll see it soon. More like a web application and not so much an appy application. All right. The last thing is the coolest thing. Waterproof Kindles. You can now drink wine in the tub and read Wine Folly at the same time. I'm totally in love with this idea. Plus, I've been hearing from our publisher, in a few months, they're going to re-release the Kindle version of our book. By the way, don't buy it now. It sucks. But as soon as it's awesome, I'm going to let you all know it's actually going to be an amazing book. Okay. So, the last piece of news is the biggest and saddest and most upsetting piece of news to everyone, and it is the Napa, Sonoma, Lake, Mendocino, and Solano County fires. We are so devastated by this. I was just at Signorello Estate Vineyards, the tasting that I did, where we talked about Cabernet glasses, different glasses affecting wine. That was actually shot on Signorello Estate, which is now burned to the ground. We are so sad. We send our love out to you guys, all of you at the vineyards. I heard that the winemaker and a lot of the team actually stayed and tried to fight the fires themselves. So this has been an effort that everyone down there is working together, bucket brigades, trying to fight these fires, which were actually, so many happened at once. People were trying to figure out what caused them. Super high winds, super dry climate. You kind of get the spontaneous combustion thing, which is why so many happen in several different places. And the really upsetting thing about all of this is there's been confirmed on Washington Post that 21 people have died in this, which is no, man, we've had fires in California for years, guys. And this has been the worst one in many years. It's extremely upsetting. And a lot of the people most affected by this are regular human beings with small houses, or they live in a trailer park. 2 trailer parks burnt down, a Trader Joe's burnt down, an entire little community of like small ranch houses burned down in Santa Rosa, and it's just really, really devastating. Of the wineries hit, Signorello, White Rock, Nicholson Ranch burnt down, Paradise Ridge, right close to Santa Rosa, Frey, which by the way was the first, I think, word has it they were the first organic and biodynamic winery in that entire area, and they burnt down. James Cole, which is next to Signorello, fought the fires. They lost several outbuildings, but I think they still have their main winery. Vinrock Wine Caves, their caves are fine, but their entire winery facility that was above ground is burnt down. And Storybook Mountain Vineyards up in Calistoga, they lost one of their outbuildings which had all of their library wines in them. So their entire history is gone. And so we really, really feel for these guys. It's been a really hard year. As far as this vintage is concerned, apparently 90% of the vineyards have been harvested. So people have the grapes in and they're starting to ferment. The issue now is like, how much is the smoke going to actually affect the wines that's being fermented, or the grapes that were picked that are not being fermented yet? One winemaker said they're covering up their fermentation tanks and hoping that the carbon dioxide pushes out the smoke. We shall see. Other sad things, if you want to see pictures and find out what's going on, get down on the street. Esther Mobley, the wine writer for the SF Chronicle, has a very, very up-to-date Twitter, and she's cruising around the area and checking in with all the wineries, and you can follow her on Twitter and get exactly what's happening a la menu. So that's my story, and if you do care about these little families who've lost, there is actually, since the earthquake in 2014, you can go to this website, napavalleycf.org. They're actually very well immobile, like lots of good team community support, getting money to actual people who need it and to support them through this really, really hard time. So, bitterness, right? We're feeling it. This has been a rough week. So, it's interesting. And we're talking about taste. Like, why is it we go in through, what do we actually get when we taste wine, when we taste food, when we taste anything? So far, most people, most scientific communities accept the word flavor as a combination of taste, smell, and touch. So what's happening in this general vicinity is considered flavor. Of course, you and I are very, very different in how we taste wine. Actually, some of you might be very similar to me. Some of you are definitely very different than me. And the funniest thing is, there used to be taste panels, and they would actually analyze commercial product foods like Pringles. And then they started applying the concept of commercial foods and testing flavors with taste panels to wine. And this is when the whole the language of wine changed. I think it's somewhere around the 1970s that this really started occurring. And what they noticed was on the taste panels, some people would perform exceptionally well. They would seem to be following the rules and understanding the concepts of taste, whereas other people didn't seem to get it. Turns out, they were never asking themselves whether or not it was just somebody who was just stupid, or if it was actually a DNA difference, a genetic difference in the way they perceive taste and flavor. And as we're only just seemingly to be finding out, turns out it actually could be genetics. So we actually change. Our ability to taste changes every day. Your hormones affect the way you taste. So some wine tasters will say, I'm really having an off day today. I might say that from time to time, maybe more often than I should. But that is your hormones. Your hormones will very much so. If you're pregnant, I'm sure many women can attest to how pregnancy affects the way you taste things. And your age, how old you are. We've noticed over time that your sensitivity decreases, but other types of sensitivities might increase as they sort of take over for the losses. Okay. So there's basically, we have a ton of different flavors that we associate in taste and flavor. And the big two are sweetness and bitter. If it's bitter, it's bad, and if it's sweet, it's good. And if you look across wine ratings across the world in the history, and especially on Vivino, you'll notice this sort of focus on sweetness equals good, bitterness equals bad. And the funny thing about that is sweetness is a little bit more complicated than just sweetness. We actually have two receptors that feed in what is sweetness, and we can taste a great deal of compounds as tasting sweet. So not just classic old sugar, but other like fake sugars can taste sweet to us as well. There's another funny thing where you know how some people say, well, I'm a sweet or I'm a savory. Turns out, if you are a savory, you have a little bit more association with the savory side, which is connected to the sweet receptor. And those who are sweet have more association with, it's a change in the way that the receptor works. So this is why we have this difference between sweet and savory. We're gonna post about this later on the blog, so you can check all my sources and call my shit out later if you'd like. Okay, and then finally, this is the weirdest thing that I read today. Alcohol and sugar have the same reward pathway to our brain. So when we taste something, I've called up a wine, this is the worst example. So if we taste a sugary, delicious beverage, like say a soda, that's alcohol free, we get the same sort of reward mechanism in our brain as we would with an alcoholic beverage. So this is another thing that makes you wonder about our relationship with food. And this is also the truth with alcoholics. So if you have some serious alcoholic friends who really like sweet things, I don't know, there might be something there. But it does really make me want to do the self-check. Am I an alcoholic? A little bit more frequently after reading this. But then we get into bitterness. So bitterness, remember when I said sugar has two receptors? Well, bitterness, we have over 25 different receptors on our tongue that can perceive bitterness. Extremely complex system that we don't even fully understand. It is way more advanced and it is way more complicated, and we only just barely understand it. What blows my mind about this is that bitterness we find as a negative association. We don't really truly understand the origins of this negative association. It could be because of toxic green vegetables or something like that, or it could be there's some theories that relate it to like quinine-based vegetables and your sensitivity to malaria. It's very complicated, and I honestly can say, after reading several papers on it, we don't really know exactly why people hate bitter. That said, some people love bitter. You know who you are.
You're pointing at me because I love bitter.
I'm totally pointing at you. Vincent totally loves bitter. So, this is a funny thing. Some people have higher sensitivity to bitter than others. But unfortunately, if you love bitter, they did a recent study and they associated antisocial behavior, malevolent behavior with people who like bitterness. So I'm sitting back here being like, maybe I should keep my mouth shut if I say I love tannin. But I have to say, some of the best science and moving the humanity forward has been done by some very antisocial people. So if you love bitter, hold on to it, okay? All right, so ultimately, if you love bitter, it's actually very good for you. It's been shown to, let's just get into how bitterness helps you. It's anti-inflammatory, it fights heart disease, liver disease, it has anti-cholesterol properties, it helps in weight loss in above average amounts, so if you eat a higher amount of bitter per day, particularly in this compound called catechin. Come on, catechin. Uh-oh, I wrote it down. I'm the worst at pronouncing things that are hard to pronounce. Catagen. That sounds right. Catagen. So catechin is in green tea, black tea, all kinds of teas, and it's also in red wine. So it's a secondary plant metabolite. So in order to make the plant, it comes on to protect the plant. It's seen as sort of maybe for its antifungal properties. The other secondary plant metabolites would be pyrazines. That's that bell pepper flavor in Cabernet Sauvignon. It's actually an anti-pest fighter, like it fights off bugs. So, and this is interesting because remember when I said it's in tea? Well, it's also in red wine in about the same amount as tea. There's about 30 to 100 milligrams per liter, depending on the type of red wine, of Catagen. And in green tea, there's anywhere from 50 to 300 milligrams per liter in green tea. By the way, those 300 grams per liter green teas are so bitter. They are like the most bitter things you've ever put into your mouth. Okay, and then believe it or not, I read this. There's 0 Catagen in beer and in coffee. So not all bitter things are necessarily the best for you. But fortunately, it's in wine. So I really want to get to tasting this wine. I keep showing it off. And I'm just gonna, before I even finish reading all these damn facts here for you that are neat and fascinating, I thought we could taste a bitter wine. The whole goal of this exercise is to like give a little bitterness, a little bit of love, and to maybe actually talk about, are there words? We don't have very many words to describe bitter to each other, and we never talk about them in wine. They're considered a negative attribute of wine. This is a bottle of Aglianico. It's called Prima Materia. It is actually not from, it's an Italian variant, comes from southern Italy, from Basilicata and Campania. But this one actually comes from Kelsey Bench AVA in Lake County. What's up? It's grown on Rosso d'Oro Vineyards, which is this awesome vineyard site which has so many really great Italian varieties. They have Sagrantino growing there, for one, and a lot of others. They have the Prignolo Gentile clone of Sangiovese there too, which is pretty awesome. And I've heard they even have the Bianchi Santi clone of Sangiovese growing on that property. And the cool thing about this area is everybody talks about Aglianico growing really well on volcanic soils. Well, if you can remember what Clear Lake is, it's actually right, the Clear Lake is right next to a gigantic ancient mountain called Mount Canocti. And there's tons of lava soils over there. So, and it's high elevation. And, you know, it's high elevation. The best Aglianico in Italy grows in high elevation too. And so we're thinking, oh my God, this actually might be one of the best areas for Aglianico in the United States. And get this, this is only $32 a bottle. What? Okay, let's get into tasting because I just can't stand this anymore. This is just too much bitterness for me. All right, so I'm gonna run through a tasting. Let's talk about the tasting. I'm gonna do it El Tradicional so we can learn a little bit about tasting together. Please try to find some wine close to you and put it in your mouth with me, even if it's not the same thing. All right, so first thing is the nose. Remember to find your spot. How far from that glass are you gonna be to get the right amount of sniffs, smells? So you can start far away and slowly move in until you can smell fruit or whatever it is you smell. All right, so this guy is high, to me, it's high intensity. What do you think, Vincent?
Definitely. That cassis is just hitting me right on the nose.
It's big. All right, so I got kind of scorched blackberry, but Vincent called out like, what was that? Licorice? Drugstore licorice that your grandma used to buy you, and I was like, oh yeah, my grandma totally bought me that stuff. I hated it. This is what it smells like. It smells like drugstore licorice. And then I get some crushed lava rock. I definitely get this very mineral note in a very fruity wine, I might add. Brambles, a little bit of cocoa powder, and I don't know, I almost get a little vanilla. It's got a little bit of the sweet.
A little bit of the woody.
Sweet and woody. All right, so we talked about smells. I've got like so many flavors flying at you right now. I think we're done. We got to give it a taste. And this is where it's going to get interesting. So when you taste it, your first thing to pay attention to is sweetness. Do I taste sweetness sort of towards the front of my tongue? You don't actually taste it there, but you have a lot of taste receptors there, so it's the easiest place taste it. So let's see if this wine is sweet or dry. It might have a gram or two of residual sugar. There's just a little bit of something that's fighting back against all the tannin in this wine. And sweetness really does counteract bitterness in a lot of ways.
Rounds it out.
Yeah, it does. And there might actually be like a gram or two, but I don't think there's very much. It says 14.2 ABV. There might not be any. I'd be surprised if there's not just at least one. We'll find out. We'll get the text sheet. We'll find out. All right. So first thing I taste is sweetness. Then I try to find what is going on in my mouth. This is that touch part of the taste. Pay attention to how it touches your mouth. Is it making your mouth water? Is it making your mouth feel dried out? These are the things we're talking about with bitter and astringency and that kind of a thing. And turns out, this is one of the neatest things that I found out about today, because I was like, you know what, I should really know this, like the back of my hand kind of thing. Of course I don't know it. I have to read it off a sheet. That's the antisocial behavior. Where is it? No, okay, get rid of that one. No. This is it. Bitterness and astringency are actually different things. So when you taste bitterness, we're talking about that bitter flavor of green tea. And astringency is actually that drying sensation that you get on your mouth. Interesting thing happens with tannin is it actually pulls the proteins, the saliva, your mouth produces saliva. It pulls those proteins off of your tongue, which causes that astringent sensation, that drying feeling, which is why it's so great with a big fat steak, because steak's got lots of protein, fat in it, and the brine cleans your palate. All right, so drying, roughing, puckering, and bitter are all kind of thought to be different. We have so many different bitter receptors. They're all a little bit different. So next time you put a wine in your mouth, what the heck kind of bitter are you getting? So I'm going to help you, I'm going to describe what I'm getting in this wine, and then I wanted to provide you with some other descriptors that you can use. Okay. Taste with me.
Okay, I'm tasting.
So this wine's really interesting because I get hit with acidity, but I also get hit with a blast of bitter that comes in right with the acidity. And it's almost like Darjeeling tea. I would describe it like Darjeeling tea. And in fact, if you use different flavors, go taste some teas. Get yourself some oolong, black tea, Darjeeling, Earl Grey, bergamot, whatever you can get your hands on. Bergamot and Earl Grey are technically, I think that's the same thing. But if you can get some tea, then you'll know the bitterness between the difference between green matcha and like black tea, and you'll have a great arsenal of flavor associations to start describing bitterness in wine. So we get the Darjeeling, but then I also get an astringent quality in this wine, which I have to assume is a different taste receptor on my tongue, right? So it's got, I would say that it's moderately grippy, but they're more fine-grained. It's more grainy and fine-grained. It's not quite powdery though. It's not quite powdery grip, but it's a little bit grippy, and I feel it maybe more towards the front, or the front of my mouth. I always do that. But we've discovered that astringency can come from different parts of the grape. So like most Catagen, this Catagen is astringent, whereas elagitonin, which comes from oak, tends to be bitter. Anyone who's ever had an American oak aged wine who knows that dill flavor, you know what I'm talking about, the dill flavor, that's the bitterness that you might be getting from the oak. So
the astringency, I'm getting some like almost, I want to say like a bitter lemon.
Oh yeah, that is a good call. Yeah, bitter lemon. I want to give you some bitterness descriptors to use on a regular basis. bitter cherry, bitter plum, cocoa powder, bitter orange. These are words, if you read them, you know they're talking about bitterness, by the way. Secret tip. Dandelion, tobacco leaf, tomato leaf, green almond. Big time. You'll see green almond in the Wine Folly book, actually. That's what I'm talking about, guys. Espresso, bitter herbs, bay leaf. Bay leaf is totally bitterness. Bay leaf tastes totally bitter. And radish and olive. So a Syrah with a lot of olive notes has a lot more bitterness to it versus the sweet blueberry thing that some people also like. So there you go. This is our talk today. We're talking bitterness. It's been a bitter week all around. And as much as I despise bitter, or I guess I really don't. I love bitter. I'm like one of those bitter people who just, I love bitter things. Tea,
You're
like
so
whatever.
bitter. You're so bitter.
So I gotta compliment the saccharine sweetness. It's just too sweet in here. I gotta compliment it. So if you love bitter, give yourself a pat on the back. You're actually loving the only thing in wine that's good for you. All right? I love you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, thank you. Yeah, remember, if you love us, the best compliment you could ever give us is to tell somebody about Wine Folly, A, and then B, subscribe wherever the link is in whatever application that we are, or just go to winefolly.com/subscribe and you can subscribe right there. And if you post any questions on this live video, I'm gonna answer them right after this, so post away. All right, again, this was Prima Materia, Alianico. I know I didn't hold it up for too much longer. This wine's delicious, by the way. It has bitterness, but it's super fruity. Awesome Alianico from America. All right, I love you guys. Peace out.